Welcome to Far East Fusion, my coronavirus social distancing experiment, a series where I take a Western dish and fuse it with an Asian dish that I fell in love with while living in Asia. I'm Ryan, and the following isn't a recipe, it's my attempt at a little creativity in the kitchen. I'm very much learning to cook as I make these dishes, so don't be surprised if this fails and I look like a clod. So, I was going through some old footage of mine, and I came across a video that I made way back in 2012. Sarah and I did 24 hours in Philadelphia. The video is a bit old, but it's a quick and fun watch. You should check it out. Sarah raps in it.
West Philadelphia cheesesteaks. Delicious.
Anyways, I was thinking about that trip to Philly, and the thing that I remember the most was trying my first authentic Philly cheesesteak. It sent me down a rabbit hole, and eventually to me thinking about what would make a good Chinese version of a Philadelphia cheesesteak. There are a lot of great beef dishes in China, but a lot of them involve poaching or braising beef. I think a stir fry would translate best for this. I wanted something spicy and with some Chinese flavors, but I didn't want to overcomplicate it. Essentially, a Philly cheesesteak is just steak and onions. Eventually, I settled on jiao牛肉. This translates to green pepper beef slivers. When I lived in Sichuan, I ate a ton of jiao牛肉丝, which is the pork version of this dish. The beef version is harder to find, but it's essentially the same thing but with beef. I'm going to add a bit more spice to this version though, by using a mix of green peppers and some chilies.
That's too easy.
Now some might say that this is too easy. It's basically a stir fry with some cheese on it, placed on a bun. Well, I agree. That's why I'm making my own buns. The best Philly cheesesteak buns are crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Philadelphia has a large Italian population, so I'm going with an Italian-style bun. This means starting things off by making what's called a biga in Italian. It's a starter. Yesterday I forgot to make my biga. Okay, it's not a problem. I don't normally like to use this, but I'll be back in a bit. And as I kill this rabbit, remember, this is not a recipe, this is creativity. Oh, hey, what's up? Sorry to interrupt, but we forgot to make a biga. Oh, shit. Well, I can put this on hold and make it now. Oh, that'd be great. You are awesome. One of the greatest people I know. Fucking idiot. Okay, to make a biga, you just need a basic dough. I've got 320 grams of flour, a half teaspoon of instant yeast, and just under a cup of warm water. I'll mix it, knead it, and let it rest for 3 hours before putting it in the fridge overnight. Oh. Okay, we got our biga here. You're going to want to take it out of the fridge early so it comes back to room temperature. Now we'll make another dough to combine with our starter. 320 grams of flour, so this will be 50% biga. About 2 teaspoons of salt, a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon of yeast. Give it a good mix. And now let's combine it with our starter. I'm going to add it in chunks. I'll divide this into 10 pieces. And now we're going to add water to it all, about 3/4 of a cup. I forgot to add a tablespoon of olive oil. And now we'll simply knead it until it's smooth and not sticky. And we'll let it rest in an oiled bowl for 2 hours. It should double in size in that time. What should I do for 2 hours? I kind of feel like watching Back to the Future. It's been 2 hours and this dough is looking incredible. It's puffed right up with all kinds of happy little bubbles. Now I'm going to divide it into 6 pieces. And 1 piece at a time, let's make our buns. I'll flatten it out into something that resembles an oval. Now I'll fold one end about halfway over, like you're folding a piece of paper for an envelope. I'll press the corners down and then squash down this little nubbin. And then spin it around. In baking, you always work towards yourself. And we'll fold over the other side. Then take the dough from just above the seam and fold it over in half. We pinch that closed, and then place it seam side down. That's pretty much it. Keep in mind this is my first attempt, so these will only get better. The French call this type of bun a bâtard. This literally means bastard. It was called that because typically bread in France was either made into round balls or baguettes, so I guess this creation is kind of the bastard child of those two types of bread. That being said, we're making Philly cheesesteaks here, so we should probably use the name that they use in Philadelphia, hoagie. The name hoagie comes from the Italian immigrants that worked on a shipyard on Hog Island. It was originally called a hoagie, but over the years the name changed to hoagie. This recipe is from one of the greatest bread recipe books of all time. It's called The Bread Baker's Apprentice, Mastering the Art of Extraordinary Bread, and it's by Peter Reinhardt. If you want to get into bread making, it goes into all kinds of details for all kinds of bread items. I highly recommend it. I'm placing these on my baking sheet, which has been dusted with a bit of cornmeal. And they'll need to rest for another hour, so I'm just going to cover them with a bit of plastic wrap that's been lightly greased. Alright, I just put my beef in the freezer. I've got a couple of pieces of ribeye. I'm going to let that sit in there for about a half hour to get it partially frozen so it's easier to slice. Meanwhile, I'll make my marinade. I've got some homemade pickled chilies here. I highly recommend pickling your own chilies. It's fun, you can customize the flavors. I've included some Asian flavors in them like fish sauce. I'll chop a couple up, about 20 grams worth. Oh, they're so good. I'll add a tablespoon of douban jiang. This is a fermented chili bean paste. It's famous in Sichuan, really rich umami and a nice spiciness to it. Dishes like mapo tofu have that douban jiang flavor to them. It's one of my favorite Chinese ingredients. A tablespoon of light soy sauce. I'm running low on soy sauce. Luckily I have another one here, which is also empty. I'll just top it off with a bit of dark soy sauce. It's not exactly the same, it's a bit less salty, but it'll do. A tablespoon of cooking rice wine, aka Shaoxing wine, and about a teaspoon of ground white pepper. White pepper is far more popular in Chinese cooking than black pepper. It's a little bit spicier maybe, but the flavors are less complex. Finally, a couple splashes of oil, which will keep it from sticking and also help to enhance the fragrance of the marinade. Quick little stir, and we're ready for our beef. Oh, wow, that's amazing. The beef is now pretty solid. Ribeye is a really tender cut. It doesn't need much cooking time at all. It's one of my favorite cuts of beef. I'm going to slice it as thin as possible. I want the pieces to be about the size of a baby's ear. There, now I can really get these cuts right. I'll give that a stir and we're going to let that marinate for a minimum of 15 minutes. Back to our buns, our hoagies. My pan is a bit crowded, but we should be okay. And these are finally ready to be baked. My oven has been preheated to 220 Celsius or 450 Fahrenheit. Here's a good trick for fluffy bread. As I preheated my oven, I put a pan in it. Now I'm going to pour some boiling water in it. And I'll put it back in the oven on the lowest shelf possible. This will make our oven the perfect hot, moist environment for our bread to cook. Those should be done in about 20 minutes. Let's get the stir fry going. I'm chopping about a half of an onion. Now I'm chopping a chili pepper. I'll get some of the seeds out by slamming these down a little bit. This is a green pepper. It is green. I am chopping it now. And that's all our ingredients prepped. We can start frying now. Shit, I forgot to score the buns. Stupid, Ryan, stupid. Oh, it's too late. I'm such a screw up. Some bakers will tell you that it's really important to make slices on the top of the buns because it'll control where the gas escapes as it expands in the oven. But I'm like, F that. I don't like people playing with my buns. Oh, bunsies are dunsies. They're looking really good. I'll just set those aside to cool. And here we go, oil in a hot pan. Onions in. We'll cook them until they're somewhat translucent. Green pepper and chili pepper in. While that's cooking, I'm going to slice up some provolone. There are two options when it comes to cheese on a Philly cheesesteak. There's the slices of melted provolone, and there's Cheese Whiz. Cheese Whiz is basically spreadable cheese. However, it doesn't actually contain cheese, so I guess it's basically a spreadable orange paste. I'm going to stick to the real cheese. Provolone is an Italian cheese. It's semi-hard and it melts nicely, as you'll see. This is ready for our beef. Where's the beef? That is incredibly fragrant. This is all done. I'm going to take some out for later, and I'll separate what's left into 2 piles, one for me, one for Sarah, and I'll put our provolone on top of it. And when that's nice and melted, it can go directly on our buns. I am so excited to eat this. Philly cheesesteak with a Sichuan twist. I think they turned out great, but I guess I should probably try them. This might be the best thing I've ever made on this series. It's got just the right amount of spice, the flavors are deep with umami, the beef is tender, buns are popping with freshness. Actually, I think the buns could have used a bit more time. They're fully cooked, but I could have let them get a bit crispier. To be honest, I had a bit of trouble with the oven.
No! My oven's up now.
God damn it, William.
But this is definitely a recipe I'll make again. Sarah scurried off with her sandwich and is now flirting with it like it's the captain of the science club. What the hell are you doing here? Have you seen a small black rabbit? No. Well, sorry to bother you. An idiot.
Drove the gates, feeling anxious around 12 a.m. Just move, but might move it all out again. This feel like deja vu. Swear last year my brain bought the same thoughts through. I blame the things I do. Only difference is I ain't in school. You heard that news? I flip birdies to these worms in suits. Getting moved in a couple months, so we need a new